Yeah, we've grown in a multitude of areas. I think at that point we weren't really identified as who we are now, and we've grown in a lot of aspects. A lot of more experience up front now, both offensively, defensively, and special teams. So I think we've grown in a lot of places.
C.J. Stroud, quarterback of the Houston Texans, rookie of the year most likely, already 3 touchdown passes in his postseason career as a rookie, too short of setting the all-time record, breaking the record currently held by Mark Sanchez. If you didn't know that one, that was a topic of a trivia question yesterday. Anyway, C.J. Stroud
that is
looking
that's
great in the
crazy.
regular season.
That is crazy.
Mark Sanchez. Well, and Sanchez had 4 playoff wins his first 2 seasons on the road. 4 road playoff wins. I think that was the all-time record for quarterback road playoff wins, rookie, first year, second year, whatever. Okay, so we've seen basically 2 straight playoff games for the Indianapolis Colts because Week 18 was de facto playoff game, not Indianapolis Colts, Houston Texans. They had to play the Indianapolis Colts in Indy. That's why my brain misfired on that one. Week 18 to even get in. Then they have the Browns come to town. They completely destroy them, and the reward for that is you go to Baltimore and you take on the number 1 seed. But, Peter, I'm sure John Harbaugh, I'm getting Harbaugh's mixed up too in my brain today. John Harbaugh fully ready for this because they've been there, done that. They've been caught flat-footed as the 1 seed that had the week off, that took the foot off the gas the final week of the regular season and got beaten at home by the Tennessee Titans. This still isn't going to be easy. Even if you're fully prepared for it, the Texans have something special going on, and they may not be ready to take the next step, but, it's fair to ask whether the Ravens are ready to take the next step because, lo and behold, C.J. Stroud and Lamar Jackson have the same number of postseason wins and also the same number of postseason touchdown passes. 3 touchdown passes, 1 postseason win. That's the one thing Stroud and Lamar Jackson have in common.
You know how sometimes, Mike, what you don't know and you don't realize how big a moment this is, so you just go out and play like you've always played? That's really the impression I get from C.J. Stroud. I went to the Houston game last week, and afterwards I stood with him in the tunnel outside the interview room for a few minutes, and I asked him, quite honestly, I said, the only other time I've really had a one-on-one like this with you is after the draft when I asked you all about the S2 test, this cognitive test that is supposed to foretell how players are going to produce under pressure and how well they're going to be able to diagnose what the opposition is going to do to them and all that. And you obviously got that horrible grade in that. I said, does what has happened this season, does what has happened today against the number 1 defense in the NFL, do you take any particular pride in that after what has happened with the S2 test? And he said, I'm too blessed to stress. And he said, I use the negativity for motivation. Of course I do. But the only thing that is important to me, playing for my teammates, playing for God, playing for my family. And he just, and I have to tell you, Mike, nothing in his eyes told me any different that he is angry. He is going to try to stick it up somebody's rear end. He's 22 years old. He's the leader of an NFL team. He loves it, and he's not stressing about anything. And that's why I think this is a dangerous team going into Baltimore, playing really well at the end of the year and playing really well in a playoff game where they dismantled the Cleveland Browns.
And the Texans made their regular season debut in 2023 in Baltimore. 25-9 was the final score of the game. The Ravens won, the Texans lost, but that game was not 25-9. It didn't feel, as you watched it, like it was a 16-point margin. It was closer than expected for a while, because entering the season, we just thought the Texans were going to continue to be what the Texans have been. How can you turn it around dramatically in one off season when they've been the most dysfunctional team in the NFL for multiple years? The Ravens have high hopes. They're breaking in the new offense. Now, both teams are dramatically different than they were back then. But the point is, when you see 25-9, folks, don't be fooled into thinking it was a blowout. It was a closer game than the score would suggest. And 9.5, when I see that line for this game, I'm like, that's just too much. I'm not ready to go out on a limb and say that the 1 seed in either conference is going to lose this weekend, but we've seen this movie before. We see what happens when the team that hasn't played for 2 weeks and possibly didn't put its best effort out there in the regular season finale because it didn't need to, taking on a team that had to win Week 18, that had to win, obviously, wild card round, that comes in feeling confident. We've seen it. We've seen it. The Ravens witnessed it. I think the fact the Ravens witnessed it 4 years ago should be enough of a warning to have them ready. Even if they are ready, though, Peter, what I've seen from C.J. Stroud, and we haven't seen much of him in a standalone setting. It's been lost in the cluster of 1 o'clock Eastern games. But it's pretty damn spectacular, and it's amazing how quickly he's figured it out. And I think this is a very dangerous game for the Ravens. And this is an opportunity, a mandate for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense to prove that they can win at this level. We know they can win in the regular season. They have to show they can win in a setting like this.
Yeah, the pressure is on Lamar Jackson. If you look at these 4 games this weekend, whether he feels it, whether he talks about it, whatever, it's there. And the fact is, even though he hasn't played a playoff game in 3 years, the fact is he's played 4 playoff games in his career. He's won 1, and he's averaged 13 points a game in those 4 games. So it's clear, he is the number 1 seed. Now, the one difference this year is very simple. He has far more receiving talent, tight end talent than he's had in any other year, that any other team that he's ever taken to the playoffs. So theoretically, there should be nothing standing in the way of Lamar Jackson of, in fulfilling his, whatever you'd call it, his playoff destiny. But he's got all the tools that he hasn't had before. So it's a huge game for Lamar Jackson. And, it's, again, I'll just emphasize, I don't think the Houston Texans come in thinking, oh, my God, we're going in to play the number 1 seed, and, oh, my God, we got to be tight. I don't think you're going to see a tight team on Saturday in Baltimore.
And we've seen it time and again. House money, nothing to lose. Nobody expects anything from us. We're supposed to lose. All the ingredients are there for the Texans to have the perfect mindset to go in and pull an upset. And all the ingredients are there for the Ravens to be tight, for the Ravens to be nervous, for the Ravens to be hyper-aware of the reality that that special season you've put together can evaporate just like that. And it can happen the same way it happened for them on Christmas night in San Francisco. A bounce of the ball this way versus that way makes all the difference and sets the tone. And all of a sudden, the Texans are up 7 because there was a crazy bounce and a guy grabbed it and ran it in for a touchdown, and the Texans are up. And then, then they're up again. And before you know it, you've got that feeling that everything we've worked for is evaporating in this window on a Saturday afternoon. So, again, I've picked the Ravens to win. I haven't picked them to cover. I think the Texans are going to keep it close, and I'm not going to be shocked if they shock the world, as we've seen other teams do to the 1 seed in the divisional round. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.